What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved and humble actors finally reaches his breaking point on live television? What you're about to witness is the moment Keanu Reeves, known for his calm demeanor and philosophical outlook, completely lost it during what was supposed to be a routine morning show appearance. This isn't your typical celebrity interview gone wrong. This is the day George Stephanopoulos pushed too far, and America watched in shock as the John Wick star unleashed years of pent-up frustration in the most unexpected way possible. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really caused Keanu to snap. Now, let's get into what really happened behind the cameras and during those explosive moments that had the entire Good Morning America studio in complete silence. The morning started like any other at the Good Morning America studios in Times Square. Keanu Reeves had arrived early, as he always did, dressed in his signature black attire, looking relaxed, and ready for what his publicist had assured him would be a friendly chat about his latest film project. The actor had been making the rounds on various talk shows, and each interview had gone smoothly, with hosts asking the usual questions about his career, his charitable work, and his thoughts on the film industry. But George Stephanopoulos had other plans. As Keanu settled into the interview chair, adjusting his jacket and offering his characteristic warm smile to the crew members setting up the lighting, Stephanopoulos was reviewing his notes with an intensity that should have been the first warning sign. The veteran journalist had been facing criticism lately for what some called softball interviews, and he was determined to prove he could still conduct hard-hitting journalism, even if it meant ambushing an unsuspecting guest. "Good morning, Keanu," Stephanopoulos began as the cameras rolled, his voice carrying an edge that immediately put everyone on alert. "Thank you for joining us today." "Good morning, George," Keanu replied, his voice steady and genuine. "Thanks for having me on the show. Before we talk about your new film, I want to address something that's been bothering me, and I think it bothers a lot of our viewers too," Stephanopoulos said, leaning forward with a predatory gleam in his eyes. "You've built this entire image as this humble, down-to-earth guy. But isn't it all just an act? Isn't the truth that you're just as ego-driven and money-hungry as every other Hollywood star?" The question hit the studio like a thunderbolt. Crew members exchanged uncomfortable glances, and even the veteran camera operators seemed taken aback by the sudden shift in tone. Keanu's expression didn't change immediately, but those who knew him well could see the slight tightening around his eyes, the almost imperceptible pause before he responded. "I'm sorry, what exactly are you asking me, George?" Keanu said, his voice still calm but with a new undertone that suggested the facade of politeness was already beginning to crack. "I'm asking if the whole humble Canadian nice guy thing is just a carefully crafted public relations strategy," Stephanopoulos pressed, his voice growing more aggressive. "Because, frankly, some people are getting tired of what they see as a performance." Keanu took a deep breath, and for a moment, it seemed like he might deflect the question with his usual grace and humor. Instead, he looked directly into Stephanopoulos' eyes with an intensity that made the host shift uncomfortably in his chair. "George, I came here to talk about a film that I'm passionate about, that employed hundreds of people, and that I hope will entertain audiences," Keanu said, his voice measured but gaining strength. "I didn't come here to defend my character to someone who clearly made up his mind about me before I walked through that door. But that's exactly what I'm talking about," Stephanopoulos shot back, sensing blood in the water. "You can't even give a straight answer to a simple question. You're deflecting, just like politicians do." The comparison to a politician was clearly the wrong move. Something shifted in Keanu's demeanor, a hardening that those familiar with his film roles would recognize, but had never seen from the man himself in real life. "A simple question?" Keanu repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet that made everyone in the studio lean in. "You want a straight answer? Here's your straight answer, George. I've spent 30 years in this industry trying to treat people with respect, trying to use whatever platform I have to make things better, not worse. I've never claimed to be perfect, and I've never claimed to be anything other than what I am." "And what exactly are you, Keanu?" Stephanopoulos asked, clearly not reading the room or the warning signs that were becoming increasingly obvious to everyone else present. Keanu was quiet for a long moment, staring at the host with an expression that was becoming less friendly and more calculating with each passing second. When he finally spoke, his words carried a weight that seemed to fill the entire studio. "I'm someone who's been doing this long enough to recognize a hack when I see one," Keanu said, his voice now carrying an edge sharp enough to cut glass. And right now, George, I'm looking at someone who thinks ambushing guests makes him a journalist, instead of just making him look desperate for ratings. The word hack hung in the air like a live grenade, and for a moment, the entire Good Morning America studio was so quiet, you could hear the hum of the overhead lights. Stephanopoulos' face flushed red, his professional composure cracking for the first time in years of live television. "Excuse me?" Stephanopoulos sputtered, clearly not expecting Keanu to fire back with such precision. "Did you just call me a hack on live television?" "I called it like I see it," Keanu replied, his voice now completely stripped of its usual warmth. "You invited me here under false pretenses. You ambushed me with questions designed to create conflict, rather than inform your audience. And now you're acting surprised that I'm not playing along with your little game. This is journalism, Keanu," Stephanopoulos said, trying to regain control of the situation. "Hard questions are part of the process. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." Keanu laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was the kind of laugh that made crew members take a step back and wonder if they should intervene. Though no one seemed quite sure how. "Hard questions?" Keanu repeated, shaking his head slowly. "George, let me explain something to you about hard questions. A hard question would be asking me about the challenges of portraying grief on screen after losing people I care about. A hard question would be asking about the responsibility that comes with action films in today's climate. What you're doing isn't journalism. It's tabloid theater. I'm trying to get to the truth about who you really are," Stephanopoulos insisted, but his voice was beginning to waver as he realized the interview was spinning completely out of his control. "The truth?" Keanu stood up from his chair, and for the first time since the interview began, Stephanopoulos looked genuinely concerned. "You want the truth? The truth is that you've spent the last 5 minutes attacking my character because you think it makes good television. The truth is that you're so desperate to prove you're still relevant that you're willing to ambush a guest who came here in good faith." "Sit down, Keanu," Stephanopoulos said, but it sounded more like a plea than a command. "No, I don't think I will," Keanu replied, his voice rising for the first time. "You know what the real truth is, George? The truth is that I've been doing this job for 3 decades, and I've met a lot of interviewers. Some are curious, some are insightful, some are funny, and some are just trying to do their job. But then there are people like you, who think that being confrontational makes them important. The camera operators were getting shots they never expected, and the director in the control room was frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let this unprecedented moment play out on live television. "You're out of line," Stephanopoulos said, but his authority was completely gone now, replaced by the look of a man who had clearly bitten off more than he could chew. "Am I?" Keanu asked, taking a step closer to the desk. "Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who decided to turn what should have been a conversation about art and storytelling into some kind of gotcha moment. You want to know who I really am? I'm someone who's tired of people like you who think that tearing others down makes them look bigger. I'm asking legitimate questions about your public persona." Stephanopoulos tried again, but his voice was barely above a whisper now. "My public persona?" Keanu's laugh was sharper now, more dangerous. "George, let me tell you about my public persona. My public persona is someone who tries to be kind to people, who gives up his seat on the subway, who takes pay cuts so that crew members can get better wages, who doesn't talk about the charities he supports because he doesn't need the publicity. That's not a persona, that's just who I choose to be. But surely you must see how some people might view that as calculated," Stephanopoulos said, making one last desperate attempt to justify his line of questioning. That was the moment Keanu Reeves finally erupted. "Calculated?" His voice exploded across the studio, with such force that several crew members actually jumped. "You think kindness is calculated? You think treating people with respect is some kind of marketing strategy? Let me tell you what's calculated, George. What's calculated is a so-called journalist who decides to attack someone's character on live television because he thinks it will get him talked about on social media." The fury in Keanu's voice was unlike anything anyone in that studio had ever witnessed. This wasn't the calm, philosophical actor they all knew. This was someone who had been pushed too far by a bully who had mistaken kindness for weakness. "What's calculated?" Keanu continued, his voice now filling every corner of the studio. "Is someone who sits behind that desk and thinks his job is to tear people down instead of building them up. What's calculated is pretending that ambush journalism is the same thing as holding people accountable. Stephanopoulos was completely silent now, his face pale and his hands visibly shaking. The seasoned journalist who had interviewed presidents and world leaders was being completely dismantled by an actor who had finally reached his breaking point. "You want to know what's not calculated?" Keanu asked, his voice dropping back down but losing none of its intensity. "What's not calculated is spending your own money to buy gifts for the entire stunt team on every movie you make. What's not calculated is quietly paying for a stranger's coffee every morning for 2 years because you noticed they were struggling. What's not calculated is visiting children's hospitals without cameras or publicists because you genuinely care about making kids smile." Stephanopoulos sat frozen in his chair, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, completely unable to form a coherent response to the verbal dismantling he was receiving. The control room had gone silent, with producers unsure whether to cut the feed or let this historic moment continue to unfold before millions of viewers. Keanu wasn't finished. "You know what else isn't calculated, George?" he continued, his voice now steady but carrying the weight of years of frustration. "What isn't calculated is the fact that I take the subway to work because I don't want to contribute to traffic problems in the city. What isn't calculated is giving up millions of dollars from movie deals so that other actors and crew members can get better pay. But you wouldn't ask about any of that, would you? Because that doesn't fit your narrative." "Keanu, I think we should take a break," Stephanopoulos finally managed to say, his voice barely audible. "Oh, now you want a break?" Keanu's eyebrows raised in disbelief. "Where was that consideration 5 minutes ago when you decided to ambush me?" "No, George. We're going to finish this conversation right here, right now, in front of all these people who came to work today thinking they were going to film a normal interview." The actor turned to look directly at the main camera, addressing the audience at home for the first time since the confrontation began. "To everyone watching at home, I want you to understand what just happened here," Keanu said, his voice clear and direct. "I came here today to talk about a film that I'm proud of, a story that I think people will enjoy. Instead, I was ambushed by someone who thought that attacking my character would make for good television." He turned back to Stephanopoulos, who was now visibly sweating under the studio lights. "This is what's wrong with media today, George," Keanu continued. "You're so focused on creating conflict that you've forgotten your actual job is to inform people. You're so desperate for viral moments that you're willing to sacrifice basic human decency to get them." "I was doing my job," Stephanopoulos protested weakly. "Your job?" Keanu's voice rose again. "Your job is to ask questions that help your audience understand the world better. Your job is to create conversations that matter. Your job is not to attack people who come here in good faith just because you think it will boost your ratings." The silence in the studio was deafening. Even the usually bustling control room had gone quiet, with everyone watching this unprecedented breakdown of the traditional interview format. "You want to know what really bothers me about this?" Keanu asked, beginning to pace behind his chair. "It's not that you attacked me, I can handle that. I've been in this business long enough to deal with criticism. What bothers me is that you're teaching your audience that this is acceptable behavior." He pointed directly at Stephanopoulos, his finger steady and accusatory. "You're showing millions of people that it's okay to ambush someone, to attack their character without cause, to be cruel just because you have a platform. You're normalizing the idea that being mean is the same thing as being tough, that being confrontational is the same thing as being journalistic." Stephanopoulos tried to interrupt, but Keanu held up his hand, silencing him immediately. "I'm not done," Keanu said firmly. "You want to know about my persona? Here's the truth about who I am. I'm someone who believes that we have a responsibility to treat each other better. I'm someone who thinks that if you have a platform, you should use it to lift people up, not tear them down. I'm someone who believes that kindness isn't weakness, it's strength." His voice grew stronger with each word, filling the studio with a passion that was impossible to ignore. "I've lost people I love, George. I've faced real tragedy, real pain, real loss. And you know what I learned from all of that? Life is too short to be cruel to each other for no reason. Life is too precious to waste on the kind of petty, mean-spirited nonsense you just tried to pull." Stephanopoulos was completely silent now, looking smaller and smaller in his chair as Keanu continued. "You sit there behind that desk, and you think you're important because you can ask tough questions. But real toughness isn't attacking someone who can't fight back. Real toughness is standing up for what's right, even when it's not popular. Real toughness is admitting when you're wrong. Keanu stopped pacing and stood directly in front of the desk, looking down at Stephanopoulos with a mixture of disappointment and resolve. So here's what's going to happen, George. I'm going to walk out of here, and you're going to have to explain to your audience why you thought it was appropriate to ambush a guest who came here to talk about his work. You're going to have to explain why you thought attacking someone's character was more important than having a real conversation. Keanu, please, Stephanopoulos said, his voice cracking slightly. Please what? Keanu asked. Please pretend this didn't happen? Please go along with your little game? No, George. Some things are more important than playing nice for the cameras. He walked back to his chair, but instead of sitting down, he picked up his jacket and slung it over his shoulder. To everyone watching at home, Keanu said, looking directly into the camera again, I want you to remember something. You don't have to accept this kind of behavior from anyone, whether they're on television or in your daily life. You deserve to be treated with respect, and you should expect the same from the people who are supposed to be informing you. He turned back to Stephanopoulos one final time. And George, I hope you think about what happened here today. I hope you think about the example you're setting and the kind of journalist you want to be. Because right now, you're not representing the best of your profession. With that, Keanu Reeves walked off the Good Morning America set, leaving behind a stunned studio, a humiliated host, and millions of viewers who had just witnessed one of the most explosive and unexpected moments in live television history. Stephanopoulos sat alone at the desk, the cameras still rolling, completely unable to recover from what had just happened. The man who had tried to expose what he thought was a fake persona had instead revealed his own character in the worst possible way. The control room finally cut to commercial, but the damage was done. Social media was already exploding with clips of the confrontation, and the consensus was clear. Keanu Reeves had just shown America what real strength looked like, and George Stephanopoulos had learned a lesson he would never forget. If you thought that was intense, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments, what do you think was the exact moment George Stephanopoulos realized he had made a huge mistake? Was it when Keanu called him a hack, or when he started talking about real kindness versus calculated persona? Drop your thoughts below and let's discuss this incredible moment in television history.